welcome back. You're still watching Inside Politics, and we clearly have created quite a storm on Twitter. Keep the comments scanning. At KTN News K is our Twitter handle. My Twitter handle is at FRED INDIMULI. Use the hashtag Inside Politics. We now want to move on to a different topic. Crisis talks over Jubilee-ODM merger plans. A planned coalition between the ODM party and Jubilee is in the offing. And of course, under the Azimio la Umoja phrase, which has already been reserved at the Register of Political Parties for that purpose. How do we expect this one to pan out? We've seen the coalition, the previous coalitions and how they've been working. And now we'll start with you, Dennis, and I'm sure you would want to say something about the previous conversation we had. Kindly 30 seconds of that, then you move on to this one, because this could mean a lot, including to the Jubilee Party rebels, if at all this happens before the election. Dennis?
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to insist on what I had said before, that when the president is campaigning for another candidate, he's actually upsetting Article 10.2 of the Constitution, what Mark read in a rush but never read. The national values and principles of governance referred to in Article 10 of the Constitution. Particularly, I want to pick the aspect of national unity, the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people. First of all, if the president is skewed and segmented on one side, he upsets national unity. If he says that I am the one who's going to decide on who will succeed me, he then upsets participation of the people and democracy. I could draw a very strong exegesis on this particular article, but then we are out of time. Yeah. So, but he upsets critical tenets of the Constitution, and so he actually, insults the aspect of the rule of law. But we'll discuss that on another day. Yes. But he needs to sit and become a technocrat and do what Article 10.2 says, the aspect of sustained development. That is what he needs to be focusing on, if there's going to be any legacy whatsoever anyway, or whether we discuss on Pandora's or something that Kenyans can hold and take home. Now, discussing about a possible merger of Jubilee and ODM. What we know is that Jubilee is a dead party, arguably. Maybe Mark and Tuju are there, but we don't know anybody else strong who is there. The president is exiting or transitioning out, so Jubilee itself will not have any strong leadership or direction. Number two, when you talk about the participation of the people, democracy, decisions of the people, Jubilee is the most rejected party in Kenya today. Perhaps even KANU is doing a bit better in one section of the country called Samburu. But Jubilee is so dishonored because of the nature of social and economic atrocities that it has, portended in this country. That is not enough. Let me tell you, let me ask you something, Fred, or my other colleagues. Raila has been camping in Mount Kenya region. You haven't seen any future aspirants saying that they have now migrated from Jubilee to ODM. There is no migration into ODM whatsoever. So at the end of the day, yes, they may want ODM to be the surviving party from Jubilee, but there is nothing important to borrow from Jubilee, and more so, yes, give the ills of Jubilee to a party that collapsed only to a regional party. You can see national representation from an ODM perspective in the current parliament. But unfortunately, yes, the trajectory going forward, the last 4 years, ODM itself has collapsed.
Dennis, yes. I do have a question for you. Do you think that probably, because you talk about Jubilee as a dead party, do you think that ODM, such a coalition, should or would be a Jubilee salvation?
The thing that ODM has always wanted, and this has been mentioned time and again, is the access to national assets, to use them to perpetuate a win falsely when it comes to 2022. There's something that is flawed that is called the deep state. Assets, maybe many other instruments that they want to use. They have believed for very long that they have won elections, but the thing that they have lacked was the deep state, quote unquote. Okay. And that is what Raila is begging hope for. Raila does not want an endorsement by the people. He wants that succession being endorsed from State House. But there is no way that you can overlook the mandate of the people. The social contract to rule in this country comes from the people. So by virtue of them being with Jubilee, they believe that Jubilee is a government, yes, and they can be able to access money, resources, the same way they did with BBI. They can be able to access instruments and resources and whatever it is that there is to win an election unfairly. And that is something that the people of Kenya are not going to agree.
Gentlemen, I want us to look at the pros and cons of having such a coalition because we've seen what has beleaguered, what has the kind of hurdles that previous coalitions have had to go through, split governments, nusu mkate and all these things. Now we're talking about another possible coalition between one party that has been in power for the last 9 or so years and the other party that's supposed to have been in the official opposition party for the last 9 years. Those two parties coming together, of course, pre-election, yes, the numbers could work out, but moving forward, is this a workable union, Dismas?
You know, it must not be lost on the audience that when you talk about Jubilee, we have to be sure whether we are talking about Jubilee A, Jubilee B, Jubilee C, which would be TNA or URP.
As it is right now, Jubilee is still one party unless the rebels leave.
Well, you know, there's a bit of incest between those political parties because the people who say that Jubilee is dead are still in. They align themselves with UDA, but they've refused to disconnect from Jubilee. So they're supporting UDA, giving UDA unlimited support, but they haven't left Jubilee. But even without going to the mechanics, we know for a fact that political parties in Kenya are strong as the leaders who run the show. So for Jubilee to remain powerful or relevant, in as much as it suffered heavy brand fatalities, it will depend on President Kenyatta whether or not he wants to retain Jubilee to be a strong political party. But as you look at the 2022 general elections, any clever politician will be getting into as many arrangements or as many coalitions as possible because as it is right now, there is emerging a group of so many powerful Kenyan personalities and everybody is forming a political party. If you just throw your eyes across the governor's landscape, almost 50% of the governors have registered political parties. And to be president in Kenya, all you need is a 50% plus one. So these governors with political parties who have essentially morphed into tribal leaders controlling a certain basket, if you want to increase your probability of winning, you must have a conversation with them and retain them. So there's really nothing wrong for ODM to attempt to cut a deal with whatever faction of Jubilee they want to cut a deal with, either before or after election. The motivation or the philosophy would be bring as many as same-minded people in the same basket so that you can go and campaign at a national level. Okay. Because majority of these political parties will not have a presidential candidate. So it makes sense, say, for Mr. Raila Odinga to have as many as possible political parties supporting him, provided is their sole presidential candidate. He can let the other people to square out on other positions, provided they retain that position.
Okay. Bwana Hesbon, of course, ODM has previously been in other coalitions. It was part of the Grand Coalition government. It was part of NASA. And in all these instances, ODM has always been accused of being a bully. Why would Jubilee feel so comfortable getting into a union with the ODM at this time?
Well, I think it's wrong to say that ODM has always been a bully. That's a perception. And it's a perception that has been perpetrated by junior partners in ODM. And it is anchored on the fact that ODM is a strong political party. If you look at all these political parties, you realize other than KANU, it is ODM that has stood the test of time the longest. And therefore, there are political, figures who would want to attack ODM on the basis of the solid, base that ODM has set for itself, and the fact that it has transcended one transition to another. And of course, it has had so many, challenges from within. But as a political party, it is only the party that has demonstrated that it has mechanisms to deal with the internal dynamics of democracy. And then number two, I think what we understand coalitions to mean has already been entrenched in our constitution, that we are a multi-party democracy, and therefore we are likely to have as many political parties as there are people who believe, in self-determination through a party that they can work within. But because the Constitution in itself has already prescribed, the manner in which someone is enthroned to be a president, you must have 50+1. Today, as we speak, there is no political party that even in its structures along, the 47 counties can marshal a presidential campaign that will give it 50+1. So let us not lie to ourselves. Political parties that are serious about getting power will build coalitions with like-minded political parties. And I think ODM, just like KANU or any other political party that is serious, including Jubilee, is looking at how they can build coalitions to win that power and deliver on the people based on their manifesto. Now, let me come back to Jubilee. I think whether we call it Jubilee A, Jubilee B, Kieleke or not, we know that political parties in this country, as we speak today, are founded on personalities. So the whole issue of there is no Jubilee, there is no, there is Jubilee A, there is Jubilee B, is just political talk. The day President Uhuru Kenyatta will give direction on what the political formation he supports and where he is taking the people who believe in him, it is the day people will understand that there is a political party that is serious, that is called Jubilee, and jokers have gone out. And if you want to know that Jubilee is strong, it is strong because there are people who claim that Jubilee has disintegrated, but they're in parliament. They're holding positions courtesy of Jubilee. If there were serious Kenyans, they would do what Raila Odinga once did, resign their positions as members of parliament and seek a fresh mandate. And if you look at what Governor Waiguru said, let me finish. What Governor Waiguru said the other time, that he's going to UDA because the ground is so UDA. So political parties are very critical. They actually determine who is elected. There is a factor in that political party that determines who is elected. So we cannot wish them away. But serious political parties in this country must think along coalitions. So anyone who is lying, yes.
The assumption probably is that one wing of Jubilee that's opposed to the current party mechanism or party leadership will have exited by the time the elections are due. But if at all it doesn't go that way, what does it mean for this so-called Jubilee rebels if at all ODM and Jubilee get into a coalition? Because they're even talking about presenting joint candidates in the elections. And the stories, for the sake of the viewers, the story we are talking about is actually on the front page of the Sunday Standard today. Crisis talks over Jubilee-ODM merger plans. And the story is on page 5. It makes for a very good read. Get yourself a copy of the Sunday Standard. Bwana Mark Bichachi, what does this mean if at all Jubilee and ODM get into a coalition and they want to present joint candidates at the election next year? There are people who are already not comfortable within Jubilee.
Fred, let me start with where one of my panelists stopped. And let's talk about having the instruments of state at your disposal. Almost every day at Karen, where the staff, the chef, the watchman, the security is provided by the state, there is a sermon that UDA holds under the auspices and the budget of the office of the deputy president. We know that when UDA moves around, the state is obliged to provide security. So the benefit of incumbency is with UDA also. Number two, and what is critical to understand, the reason why William Ruto remains to be deputy president of this country as we speak is because it is essential for him to access those resources. In fact, if you remember, when Jubilee started falling apart is when the deputy president and his fellow allies felt that the promise of kumi za Uhuru na kumi za Ruto was being taken away. It is part of the reason Jubilee split. So for anyone here who has previously been covetous of the endorsement of the president and now acting like a disenfranchised and disregarded bride will definitely pour cold water on said endorsement. endorsement. And from that premise alone, I must put it to you that the reason why even the deputy president went to Central and invoked the Jubilee project, invoked the president's project, most recently in the Madaraka Day celebrations, is to emphasize the necessity of having the blessing of the President Uhuru Kenyatta. And therefore, you cannot wish away what Raila Odinga is positioning himself to get, which is the endorsement of the president, the support of the Jubilee party, just simply because you did not get it. That's not how logic works. But the second issue, and what is critical here to deal with, is number one, those people who cherish Kibaki's legacy must be reminded that the highest GDP growth that was ever recorded was when Kibaki was president, Raila was prime minister, and Uhuru was minister of finance and prime minister. Therefore, I postulate to you that such a combination would work for us again. But it is critical also to remember that if you look at the elections of 2007, 2013, and 2017, it is clear that one of the things that Raila Odinga lacked was even a paltry, a cursory support from the mountain. And therefore, it only makes political sense for him to wine and dine and cajole and sing all the best romance songs for the bride that is the mountain. That is simply good politics. And you cannot then blame him for doing in 3 weeks what William Ruto has tried to do every Sunday, giving huge tithes and offerings to the same mountain. Okay. So what is good for the goose is good for the gander.
Dennis, there's a lot that can be said about the luxury that any politician could enjoy, the luxury of incumbency. And if at all President or Deputy President William Ruto would approach the 2022 election from a Jubilee platform, he would still be a deputy president on election day. But if at all Jubilee goes into a coalition with ODM pre-election and present joint candidates, it would mean that the deputy president would either be in this coalition or will have already bolted and now probably ride on the UDA ticket. What kind of implication do you think that would have on his bid for presidency?
Thank you very much, Fred. And one of the things I want to say is that the deputy president does not enjoy any fruits, instruments, or resources of the incumbency. We know that even his person has gone through an assault. Many people who are technically hired merchants and weak assassins have portended to the fact that they are ignorant of why Kenyans desired to have a deputy president who cannot be fired by the autocracy. And that note confirms their hatred towards him. They have no idea that the reason why we have security of office for the deputy president is for continuity purposes. God forbid if anything happens to the president, we'll still have a stable nation. Also, he works as the deputy general in charge to make sure that there's some sort of common sense within the presidency. He is the one who whispers to the president when the nation is going south, and when the president shouldn't listen, then it is his entitlement democratically to call him out in the most respectful ways possible. And the deputy president has done that judiciously. Back to the journey on coalitions. Fred, I posit to you that best practice world over has shown the practice of coalitions. It comes into play because of weak parties. Parties that have been weakened because of lack of intra-democracy. Parties that have been weakened because they've collapsed from movements into private, personal passes that are there for merchantship, that are there for money. Parties that cannot meet either regional or national thresholds. So they look at themselves from the top, not from the people, and they conglomerate for the purposes of capturing power, not through the people, but illegally. So the journey that this country has been taken by coalitions is a hellish road that Kenyans do not want to go through that road again. And then something extremely funny.
What would you say about the merger between URP and TNA? Because these are the kind of unions we are talking about.
Fred, the kind of disease we are handling now within the presidency, the split on ideology, is part of the mess that coalitions have taken us through.
Okay.
Developed and solid democracies are driven by single parties that campaign, that respect intra and national democracy at the end of the day. What this nation needs is a party like UDA. And allow me to say that loud and clear. When you look at UDA, it is not a coalition of tribal chiefs. UDA is a coalition with the people. It is the people who have said, we don't like the road that Jubilee has taken us. We don't like the road that ODM has taken us. Remember, when Kibaki was busy building this nation, Raila was busy complaining about carpets and toilets at the end of the day. When you look at his journey from 1997, from 2000, 2002, 2007, 2013, 2017, you realize that Raila has not been development-centered. He has been the greatest disruption that this country has experienced. So what it is that we need in this country is not an exiting or a transitioning president mobilizing for coalitions to get a third term. What we want is that the solidity of the DNA of democracy in this country, and that is a strong political party that has a national approach. Okay. UDA is currently the party with the supermajority in parliament, at least 150 members. Okay. Those ones you can't say, Fred, and it's a very distasteful word being used, that those men are belligerents. When I don't agree with my party departing from its course, its path, its democratic path that is promised the people, okay, I cannot be branded as a belligerent. So there are 150 members of parliament that are now in UDA, have partnered with the people, and that's the kind of strength we want. A party that is national and a party that has coalesced with the people to bring rulership that is of the people in this nation.
Gentlemen, also remember that even though we're talking about Jubilee and ODM and the possible merger they're working on, there are other coalitions that are going to be at play during these elections, and probably they could also be looking to merge into this already partnership being discussed already here. Dismas, you look like you're itching to respond to Dennis Ntumbi, but also, if at all Jubilee and ODM come together, they've been trying to woo the One Kenya Alliance as well. Do you think there would be space for ORCA in such a grouping?
Well, first of all, let me respond to some toxic politics. That's fake news, lies, and deceit. When one panelist says that UDA has got a majority of members both in the National Assembly and Senate, yes, that's not a statement of facts. These gentlemen and ladies are aligned to UDA. They've refused to defect from their political parties. They've refused to resign from their political parties and join UDA formally. So again, we should run away from this kind of lies and deceit. Now, going by that premises, assuming that in fact they are UDA members, then should we blame the poor state of the economy on the UDA members? Because they've got majority numbers both in the National Assembly and Senate, so therefore they're responsible for policies. And as a nation, we need to stay alive and we need to be awake to these toxic politics where politicians come and they want to mislead morale. And you know, they keep on repeating these falsities every single day, that unsuspecting Mora may actually believe that this is the truth. So we must give these toxic politics a wide berth. Now going back to One Kenya Alliance and all these coalitions, I think there is a huge room for them to cut coalitions deals right now. And you know, you are likely to have two scenarios. That if One Kenya Alliance does not get into any arrangement, either with Raila or William Samoei Ruto, then they'll be forced to cut deals after the election, because in that instance, then probability of a runoff is going to be extremely high. It means they'll be negotiating from a very weak position. Right now, they have the opportunity, if they so desire, to negotiate from a very strong position. And you know, for them, in my view, if they want to cut a deal, their best bet would be Raila Odinga, because Raila Odinga has fashioned himself as a transitional president, as a, you know, a Mandela president, that he'll be there for only 5 years. And looking at the age bracket, when Raila leaves the office, if he becomes a president, then they have the opportunity to run. But if they don't do that, they may get into trouble. if William Samoei Ruto becomes a president, he will do their political obituaries during his first year of administration, and all these ORCA principles will now become a chapter in history books. So as we move forward, they need to go to the crystal ball and look at their probability of winning. If they do not stand a chance of winning as One Kenya Alliance, then they need to look at Ruto and Raila and find that who amongst them has got a good track record of maintaining trust, who can give them a deal. Because believe you me, if Ruto becomes the president, all the One Kenya principles are going to become a chapter in history books.
Okay, Hezbon, on this, on One Kenya Alliance and possible coalitions, in as far as the mathematics is concerned, do you think they are a factor in this coalition-making process?
Well, I think they are a factor. They are a factor in the sense that just that galvanizing effect, that if Raila was to be supported by the ORCA principles, the fact that he will get votes from, their support base, and he will galvanize his own support base is a very critical factor. That if the ORCA principles join hands with Raila Odinga and work together in this coalition, together with Jubilee, there's a high likelihood that people in Raila's strongholds will vote to the last man, will turn out and vote to the last man. Why? Because they'll have this strong belief that the coming together of the four ORCA principles bolsters Raila's, possibility of winning. And then number two, let us look at the other possibility, that they come on board. Do they have a stake in terms of being the flag bearer? I think it's a very difficult situation to see these ORCA principles not supporting Raila, because there are so many things going for Raila. He's the only presidential candidate who has been in this game and has mastered the art of a political campaign. He has demonstrated that he can support someone because he supported Kibaki and Kibaki won. He has demonstrated that he can mount his own presidential campaign and marshal support all over the country. And he is the one who, in terms of age and experience, is likely to lead us into another dispensation and just do it for one term and exit.
Okay.
Two of the four finding themselves taking over from Raila is very high. The other thing that Dismas has said, that they decide to go the other direction, go with deputy president, because I can tell you, none of them is thinking that ORCA can, churn a third force. None of them is thinking like that. That's why they keep complaining that President Uhuru Kenyatta is intending on endorsing anyone, because even them, they're waiting for that endorsement. If they go with the deputy president, I think it will be a bit difficult, because in the pecking order, they are going to be reduced so much that their political clout at the national level will be insignificant.
Okay. Finally, Mark, on this one, do you think Jubilee or ODM merger would be attractive to ORCA, or will it put them off completely so that they probably go towards William Ruto or decide to be the third force?
UDA has, and the deputy president has been very clear in the sense that he does not want coalitions. Now, the question you have to ask yourself, does it make sense for Mudavadi to let go of Amani or Wetangula to let go of Ford Kenya to go join UDA? I don't see that happening. So the space they would be looking for, they'll be looking for a space where coalitions are acceptable. Now, the only place that is, whether you look at it through the lens of the BBI, which was looking at creating opportunities for more political participation and more political relevance for many leaders, or the Ferrari kind of thing that William Ruto clearly likes and espouses, then clearly the only option they have is with Raila Odinga and Jubilee and what they're forming. Now, the question they have to ask themselves is, will they be relevant in a William Ruto presidency or a Raila presidency? Their relevance, to be honest, can only be imagined through a Raila presidency, and I'll tell you why. Because it is likely that Raila will still continue to pursue the ideals of BBI, 35% devolution, which will give them a stronger base, whether it is creating ministers from parliament. All of those things will be espoused through the presidency of Raila Odinga. The presidency of William Ruto is a status quo presidency in as much as the institutions that are there. Then also, who are you going to compete it? Ngirishi? You're going to compete with Waititu? Sonko? Is that the kind of ilk that you want to be associated with? I don't think so. So the kind of coalition, if If, for example, Mudavadi wants to stand on this reformed economics, is he, as an economist, as he claims to be, going to support the wheelbarrow, going to support bottom-up that themselves can't explain? How would you even justify that move?
And of course, Dennis would want to respond to that, but you can only do that after the break as we discuss demands by UDA for CSs Matiang'i and Mushero to resign for engaging in active politics while still in office as cabinet secretaries. That after the break.